Hi, all. Thank you so much for joining us here today and for tuning in. Welcome. This is our GENup 2024 policy slate unveiling. Our policy slate is incredibly expansive this year with 55 bills on our slate, 23 that we are co-sponsors of, and 8 bills that were introduced this session that were written by our very own students. We are very excited to delve into them today. They stretch from K through 12 education technology and artificial intelligence, all the way to addressing the student housing affordability crisis impacting the CSUs and UCs as well as it relates to higher education. So without further ado, we're going to get right to it. Thank you all once again so much for tuning in and joining us today as well. So to kick it off, we'll pass it over to the wonderful and incredible Senator Anthony Portantino. Senator Portantino, take it away.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me, and thank you for sponsoring so many awesome bills this year and every year, and just working, collaboratively with the legislature, with bringing your perspective to the table. I talk to my daughter all the time, and she says the biggest problem with your generation is you don't ever ask us what we're thinking. And so I think it's important to have you part of the conversation. I'm pleased that you're sponsoring 2 of my bills this year. I think it's 691 and 997. One creates 2 more positions for student members of the Board of Education and also deals with truancy, following science on how best to better address student truancy versus penalizing parents and students, and just working much more sensitively to make sure that we, deal with what keeps a kid out of class, not just penalizing people for not being in class. So I think both are important aspects of that bill, increasing student participation in education policy, as you're all doing through GENup. I think will make the board, the State Board of Education, and public policy be better served by having student voices at the table. So we're increasing that by 2-fold, so there'll be 3. And then the other bill, I think, is just as important, given the opioid crisis throughout California, the ongoing opioid crisis, to allow students to carry Narcan on campus and testing strips on campus without having to go through any regulatory red tape, without having to get permission, without having to red flag it, just to make it available. I know there's some focus on whether training is necessary. And again, I go to my own daughter, who is a college student, who texted me the instructions of the Narcan. When I raised the issue, I said, some people are saying that we need to train people. She said, that's ridiculous. The instructions are so self-explanatory and so easy. Let's make this easily more available and accessible to students, because we know that it's going to save a life to have it available. And so that's what the 2 bills do. Again, one increases the conversation from a student perspective, and the other, I think, makes students safer on campus. And I'm proud that GENup is sponsoring both bills and working with my team to get them on the governor's desk. And so thank you for all you do and the advocacy you bring, and happy to continue our work together on so many important policy issues over the past 8 years that I've been in the Senate.
Thank you so much, Senator Portantino, for joining us today and for all your support. And we look forward to working with you on this wonderful slate this year. So thank you so much. Next up, we're going to pass it over to the wonderful Assemblymember Weber.
Well, thank you so much, and thank you all for inviting me to speak on your youth policy slate unveiling. Really want to thank you all for thinking of me again this year. I thoroughly enjoy working with your group. You guys are amazing advocates, and you come up with some amazing bills and legislation. And so this year, I have AB 1841, which is a GENup sponsor. And you all pitched this idea to my office. So what 1841 will do is it will require, kind of piggybacking off of what Senator Portantino was just talking about with the opioid crisis and the use of Narcan, but AB 1841 will require the CSUs and community colleges, and request the UC to require that residential advisors, or your RAs, be trained and have easy access to naloxone. We all know about the issue with the opioid crisis. We all know the benefits of having naloxone or Narcan readily available, readily accessible, that it can reverse the issues of opioid overdose. And so we want to make sure that in California, you have it available in your dorms, and your RAs have training, because currently in California, there's no legislation mandating that California public universities and college train their residential life employees on how to administer it. As easy as it may be, sometimes people still do want that training. And even though you can receive naloxone or Narcan through the distribution program on campus, this doesn't necessarily mean that students are going to know where to get it, make sure that it's accessible 24 hours of the day. And so, we know that in the matters of an overdose, every second counts. So having it right there in your dorm room, where you're living, down the hall, is going to be so important to saving lives. So AB 1841 provides the training requirements for on-campus university residential life staff, as well as off-campus university affiliated Greek life, for the overall wellness of your student population. So excited to inform you all that it passed out of its first committee a while ago. It passed out of appropriations earlier today, and it will be now headed to the assembly floor. As soon as it is eligible to be heard, I will be bringing it up so we can get it off of our house and over into the Senate, where Senator Portantino can help make sure that it gets passed out of that house too. But I just really want to thank you all so much for your continued support, your continued advocacy, and for, once again, bringing me an amazing bill. So thank you all so much.
Thank you so much, Assemblywoman Weber, for joining us. We're very, very much looking forward to getting this very important Narcan bill through the legislature and onto the governor's desk this year. So thank you for everything you do and in supporting student voice in the education policymaking process. All right, next up, we're going to pass it off to the former State Superintendent of Public Instruction, Delane Easton, also a member of our GENup Advisory Board. So Superintendent Easton, passing it off to you. Oh, Superintendent Easton, I believe you're muted.
I was not.
No worries.
Go. At one point, I apologize.
No worries.
So I'm thrilled to be with all of you. I really believe very strongly in your presence at the table. That I like to remind people that we tend to look at the founding of this country as if it was a bunch of old people because they were wearing white wigs, but there were a lot of very young people at the table. Madison and Monroe were in their teens and 20s when we started the conversation about having a new country. And Jefferson was a much younger man than a lot of people realized because of that white wig. And so, yeah, there were a few older folks, but we need the presence of young people at this time in making public policy in Sacramento, the biggest state in the union, but also with a lot of the most creative and wonderful people, and people with different backgrounds and different experiences and different histories. And so it's really important that you all be at the table with us and that you help us to understand and think through some of the great issues of this time in our state and in our nation. California is the most important single state, in my opinion, because it is the biggest state, but it has also got a lot of the most extraordinary inventors and creators and dreamers and doers. And so I just say to each of you, do not be intimidated by the fact that, yes, you're a little younger than some of the people at the table, but it's also you have a different perspective, and that perspective is needed. And in fact, we did have this amazing country called the United States of America because of a bunch of dreamers and doers who stood up and got counted. And that's what we need right now. So I thank all of those who are participating with you, the members who are carrying bills, that you have insights too that some of the older souls among us don't have the same insights too. And so let's keep our energy and enthusiasm, but never let anyone ask you to leave the table. We need you at the table. We need the table that it does in fact reflect different values and opinions, and that we learn to work together and to solve problems together. And that means compromising at times, and it means give and take at times, but it does mean that we are not well served by having too many folks of older generation making all the decisions. We've got to have diversity at the table. Thank you for doing this.
Thank you so much, Superintendent Easton. It's our honor to have you here and appreciate all your support on our GenUp Advisory Board. Next up, we also have the honor of having both incredible leaders and the Webbers here today as well. Our keynote speaker today is our very own California Secretary of State, the wonderful Dr. Shirley Weber. So Dr. Weber, passing it over to you. Thank you so much for joining us today.
You're muted, Secretary.
Oh, yeah, there we go.
Okay, good. Okay. First of all, thank you so very much. And I appreciate being with you. Sorry, I was running a little late. I'll have to blame this on my great assemblywoman because I was helping her son with a math problem and to save her a couple of minutes this evening. So I just wanted you to know I was doing good work anyway. But let me just say that I really I'm always honored when I come to GenUp because, you know, I spend a significant amount of my time during the year talking about how do we motivate young people to be involved? How do we get young people to want to participate in the electoral process? How do we get you to do the things that we know you can do and do better than most of us? And it's always a difficult task because normally the naysayers outside said, you know, young people are not involved. They don't really want to do these kinds of things and so forth and so on. And they don't take it very seriously. And yet every day I see evidence that that is not always true. That, yeah, we're struggling with the populations and making sure that our young folks know that it's not their time to wait till they're 25 and 30 years old and quote unquote responsible, that they can basically begin now in terms of being a part of what is going on in our nation and can participate and must participate because, you know, we gave them the vote at the age of 18, mainly because we knew that there were things that were happening to them at the age of 18 that were life-changing events, whether they were fighting in wars and being drafted to do various other kinds of things, and they could go to prison and just a host of things that were happening, and that we knew that pretending that they weren't adults was not the thing that was going to be a good idea, that we needed to move forward and make sure that they were fully franchised in this country and understand their responsibility, as well as making them understand the role they have in civic participation. And so some of you worked with us over the last couple of years to pre-register young people to vote. Register them when they're in high school. In fact, we're going to some high schools for high school week and in the next week or so to basically get them registered to vote, to help them understand they have a role to play. And that they are pre-registered to vote. We've got them working at the polls to make sure that they understand the process of what folks are doing and get a sense of engagement that's there. And now many of them will be voting for the first time in this presidential election. So we're working hard to make sure they understand the role that they play and the important role they play in keeping this country safe. More than ever before, we want you to be engaged. And I hope you know, I feel like I'm singing to the choir with GenUp, but I always tell people, if you're in a choir, that you know you have to practice. Otherwise, when you get in front of the public, you'll be an embarrassment. So we have to keep you motivated. We have to keep you engaged. We have to keep you informed of the things that are happening around the state and happening in your areas so that you know that you have a way in which you can influence and impact what is taking place. And it's not always just running for office and being an elected official. You know, we need those very strong citizens in our community that are making sure that everyone knows what's going on, that they're engaged, that they can be involved, that they can participate, and they can make a difference in what they do. And GenUp does that and continues to do that. And I would just want to ask you to continue to do that. This is going to be probably the most important election in most of our lives. And that's historic for you because in many ways, and many times, I've had my favorite who I wanted to be president or who I wanted to be a senator, but I never felt the world was falling apart. I never felt at that moment that one vote I was going to do was going to really change the world forever. And I feel a sense of urgency in this election. I mean, as we see it every day with things that are coming out, the challenging of the Supreme Court and the decisions that are being made, the rolling back of rules and regulations and laws that have been in place for over 100 years, that people are looking at them differently now. We're for the first time, probably in a long time, we are basically moving backwards in terms of taking people's rights away rather than giving them more rights. And this is really, really a challenging issue. And I know it's in California, we feel kind of insulated from some of this stuff, some of it. But when I get on the call with others, I was on the call with some folks in Arizona the other day and some folks in Texas and other places where they're literally losing their rights to do things. The things are being rolled back. And it's kind of a historic thing to look at, because most of us keep thinking that we're going forward, that when we look at the women's right to vote, the Civil Rights Act in 64, when we start thinking about all of our things that we move forward, and Roe v. Wade and all those things, we look forward. We think that this is going to be the kind of existence that we're going to have, that we've taken away a lot of these obstacles for people's right to vote, in terms of if you have a felony, if you have this kind of conviction or that kind of conviction, you have to get permission to vote again. All of those very restrictive things that we've seen over the years. In California, we have rolled those back. We've made it possible to re-enfranchise people, to not have to get permission to have your right to vote. All of those things are really, really, really important efforts, and they're hard-fought efforts. You know, when we got into the assembly, if you were on parole, you could not vote. You could not vote if you were on parole. You had to wait till you got off parole. Well, we've changed that. We've changed that in a matter of a few years. We've made that possible in California. And so we look at this and we constantly believe that we're constantly moving forward. And yet, when I'm on the call with others across the nation, I realize that a lot of this stuff is rolling backwards. You know, that the fact that everybody gets an absentee ballot in California. We have states that are taking away absentee ballots, that are making it harder to get absentee ballots, which means those who may have various challenges in getting to the polls, those who may just work challenges. And they're not only people of color, they're everybody. You know, I remember in my conversation with Toni Atkins when she was a speaker in the House, we were at an event talking about voting rights and the restrictions to people voting. And she revealed to me that her parents did not register to vote till she was in college. And the reason why they didn't was because in order to register to vote, you had to go all the way into the city to register at the courthouse. And this was in Virginia. And so not being able to take off from work, to lose a day of work for her and her father, her mother and father, meant that they would lose income, and they were poor. And so they couldn't afford to just go register to vote. They didn't have people who could register online. They didn't have people sitting at grocery stores that could register you to vote. You literally had to physically go to the courthouse in Virginia in order to be able to vote. These are the kinds of things that we sometimes forget, that we have opened up opportunities for individuals. And so as we roll back these things, it's not just African Americans, it's also women. It has to do with people who are poor, people who don't have access, those kinds of things. And so as we move, we think we're moving forward with 11 days to vote, and everybody can vote you can vote by mail, you can do all these kinds of things. There are other places in this country that are rolling those things back, and rolling them back quickly. And so we're going to find ourselves constantly fighting for our rights to be there. Since I was with you a year ago, I went to Ghana and I met with the commissioner on elections. And it was amazing, because all the way in Ghana, they're looking at us. They're looking at the United States. And they are concerned because Ghana is the oldest democracy on the continent of Africa. It's the most secure elections on the continent of Africa. And it's interesting that as they're looking at their election, they're looking at election deniers. They're looking at people who are giving out misinformation. They're constantly fighting this disinformation, misinformation on social media. And they're in Ghana. They're hours away from us. And yet they're looking at us as the North Stars. These are the people who are going to give us the guidance as to how to keep our democracy safe. And so when we start thinking in those terms, we realize that this is a journey for us, not only locally in terms of California, it's a national journey in terms of the nation watching us, but it's also, not only just our nation, but around the world, that people are looking who believe in democracy, who want a one person, one vote nation, who want the elections to count and to matter, and not find themselves as they were in Zimbabwe, where they had several elections that went one after the other because the president would not validate the election until it proved that he was president. And as a result, there were every election was challenged by the president of the country because he could do that. And that's kind of the situation in Zimbabwe that we saw over and over. And then eventually the guy who had been president for many, many years was validated as president. and the regime of terrorism and all kinds of stuff continued. So I just want you to understand what a critical moment this is for you. You know, this is something you live to tell your kids, your grandkids about what the challenge was in 2024, what the challenge was in this nation to try to preserve the democracy and to fight for the preservation of it, and how things were rolling backwards, and how you participated in stopping the backward movement and pushed forward to make sure that everyone had a right to vote, and that we actually moved this country forward and preserved what we've been fighting for, and continue to open up the opportunity for everyone to participate. So think in those terms. You know, this is not just a ho-hum. When you see your friends, tell them this will be the most important election of their life, because this will really determine how strong this democracy is and whether or not we're going to be able to continue to move forward with it. This summer, we've been talking about doing something with Fannie Lou Hamer. I went to see the unveiling of Fannie Lou Hamer back in October. And Fannie Lou Hamer, if you don't know who she is, you need to find out who she is. She was a civil rights activist, and she's a woman who said, "I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired." And she was beaten. She lost use of her kidneys. She was raped while she was in prison. She lost all of her jobs. She was sharecropper, and she continued to fight for the right to vote. And so they had something called Freedom Summer in 1964, 60 years ago. And they went across the country emphasizing the importance of voting and registering people to vote and fighting for the right to vote to pass the Voting Rights Act of 1965. We're going to try to enact some of the things of Freedom Summer, and to be Freedom Summer 2, where we can go in various places, and our staff is working on it. Some are talking about getting a bus, but going throughout the state to make sure people understand that those who fought some 60 years ago for the Voting Rights Act was not just an idle act. People sacrificed, people gave many of their lives and other things, because this was important, so that we could begin to understand what a tremendous legacy we stand on. Those who fought to get us the right to vote and to keep the democracy alive. And so we want to make sure that you and GENup and all the others that are actively engaged understand what you're doing, the power of what you're doing, and to carry that message throughout the state, that this is the most significant election in our life. And we want to do this because we're going to preserve the democracy that has been handed to us. So I'm excited about your doing. I know you got lots of legislation and things that are there, which is great. That's going to happen. We have to do even more than what we've done before. But I really appreciate the fact that you're the generation that's reminding us that it's not tomorrow, it's not yesterday, it is now. And that's important for people to understand, that we're not telling you become an activist later on, become engaged in tomorrow, but continue to move forward. I'm always pleased to be with my state superintendent, Delane Easton. When I was on the school board, she is still a force. She's still raising those issues. You never retire from activism. Once you have it in your blood, you can't stop, because you can't let this situation roll backwards. That's what will happen if we stop doing the things that we need to do. So I really thank you, Delane. It's always great to see you and hear you, and know that you're working with young people and everyone else. I'm glad my daughter's here so she can pick up the mantle and continue to push forward with the issues that are really, really important. But I'm really grateful to you, GENup, that you always invite me. You have me come. You have me be a part of the activities that you're engaged in. And you will continue to work with us at the Secretary of State's office to make sure that all of our student projects that we work on so hard, that you're an integral part of it and you help make it successful. And we're going to have an amazing turnout this summer and this year with regards to the next election, because you know that the decision and what happens doesn't rest with somebody else. It rests with you. And that in the work that you do and your friends do will make the decision as to what this nation looks like, what it stands for, and how strong California is, but equally important, how powerful we can be in working across the nation. So once again, thank you so much, Alvin, for having me, and all of the members of the board. It's great to see all of you. And I look forward to the efforts that we're going to work on together with Janelle and the others on my staff to make sure that our youth program is strong, powerful, and that we will basically be in every campus, every university on the state in California, every high school. We're going to work with every counselor to get folks registered, and we're going to really show that we have young people who care much about the democracy, and that it is your strength and your commitment that moves us forward. So once again, thank you so very much. I appreciate being asked to be on the program today, and you guys keep working hard. I look forward to seeing you around Sacramento.
Wow, thank you so much, Dr. Weber, for the very uplifting and inspiring words. So thank you so much for joining us today, for being our keynote. And as always, we really appreciate our partnership with you and your team, and also your support of our work. So on behalf of Team GENup, thank you so much, Dr. Weber.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we're going to pass it over to the wonderful Senator Limon. So, Senator, take it away.
Thank you. And it's always quite an honor and humbling to go after the amazing Shirley Weber, our Secretary of State. But it's great to be here with all of you. I appreciate you giving me a little time just to talk about the importance of civic education, which is one of the current projects I'm working on, and GENup is an incredible sponsor. Just this morning, we were able to present on Senate Bill 1094 in the Senate Education Committee. I really do appreciate GENup's support for the bill. It's a bill that promotes civic learning by requiring instruction in civic engagement earlier on, and not necessarily just waiting to high school, but having an experience and learning opportunity in grades 1 through 6 and one in grades 7 through 8. Currently, our law allows for the establishment of the State Seal of Civic Engagement, and the idea is to encourage pathways for students to become more civically engaged in democratic government institutions at the local, state, and national levels. We know that while students today are able to get the State Seal of Civic Engagement, we believe that this is something that we should start working on much earlier for all the reasons that Dr. Weber just mentioned. There is a lot at stake, and we found that on average, most students do not know the difference between the 3 branches of government as an example of why that's needed, and waiting to teach that and waiting to explain that until individuals transition from student learners to adults, we think is too late. So our goal is really to see more State Seal of Civic Engagement opportunities. Just this past year, more than 28,000 students were able to get the State Seal of Civic Engagement, and it's our hope, that we are able to see more throughout the time. I think that this is something that is very, very relevant. Not just the policy itself that we're moving forward, but the impacts of a policy or the lack of a policy that helps and ensures that our students are learning about civic education in all of their schooling. We think that that's something that's very, very important, and we think that there is a way to do that. We know that currently our teachers and our education system have elements of it. They have model curriculum. And so really what this bill does is allows for an emphasis. And so I think as I reflect on that work and the work that we're doing together, I'm very grateful for GENup for being committed as students, as scholars yourself, to this work. And uplifting this work, but also certainly engaging in this work and promoting this work and supporting this work. Very often the ideas and concepts are things that we get behind, but as they go through the legislative process, we're also aware that they hit bumps. And so having an organization like GENup be supportive, formally supporting this practice, I think is actually an incredible example of what we hope Senate Bill 1094 will do for students, that they will take the learning to experience and practice. And that is what you have all done. And you are ensuring that our youth, that our communities at large, and including, our early adults are able to engage critically about civic engagement and know the importance of it. So I want to thank you all for being important voices and representing your voice and the voice of so many others that don't get to participate here in Sacramento. I'm grateful to be a partner with you on this Senate bill that we're moving forward, and just overall very grateful for the work you do and being able to call you all partners.
Thank you so much, Senator Limon. Definitely, thank you so much. We really appreciate all of your work on such great legislation. And so next up, we have Assemblymember Berman. Assemblymember Berman is authoring AB 2097, which is another bill which we are supporting that implements a computer science graduation requirement in schools, and also requires all public high schools in California to offer at least one computer science course by 2028 and 2029 school year. So this is definitely a super exciting bill because it will support schools in developing and sustaining technological skills for students. So with that being said, let's welcome Assemblymember Berman.
Thank you so much, Allison. And it's an honor to go after my dear friend. She was a former colleague of mine in the Assembly, Senator Monique Limon, who I miss seeing on a daily basis. But it was fun to see her on the Zoom talking about such an important issue. I'm Assemblymember Mark Berman. I represent the 23rd Assembly District, and I'm really excited to be here with you all today and talk about my bill. I'll say our bill, AB 2097, the Computer Science for All Act. But I also really want to thank all of you again for your work in sponsoring one of my bills last year, AB 873, that ensures that all students in California are receiving instruction in media literacy. This year's effort, AB 2097, would guarantee access to computer science education by requiring all public high schools in California to offer at least one computer science course. And the bill also creates a computer science high school graduation requirement by the 2030-2031 school year. The reality is that California is failing. We're failing to provide equitable access to computer science in our schools, and we are falling more and more behind other states every year in increasing the access to this important education. Last year, we were behind 27 states. This year, we're behind 31 states that already require every high school to offer a computer science course. Last year, 5 states required computer science for a high school graduation requirement. This year, it's up to 8 states that require it. From Silicon Valley to Biotech Beach, California is the undisputed cradle of innovation, with over 45,000 high-paying computer jobs open and unfilled here in California today. Too many students grow up in the shadows of tech companies that are creating world-changing technology and offering good-paying careers, but they're not even getting an opportunity to learn the skills that they need to one day work at those companies in the communities where they're growing up. This is unacceptable and it's indefensible. And to be honest, I find it embarrassing for California. So that's why I'm proud to author AB 2097 to change this. Computer science for all is the first step we must take to provide the workforce needed for California to remain competitive with other states and other nations, as well as close the existing gender and diversity gaps that exist in tech. So I really appreciate GENup. I really appreciate your support and your partnership working on AB 2097. And I look forward to working with all of you to ensure that this bill is signed into law. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Assemblymember Berman, and thank you for the amazing work you are doing with your legislation. Next, I'd like to introduce Senator Manjivar. She is authoring SB 954, a bill GENup is co-sponsoring that will expand access to condoms in high school to prevent the STI epidemic among our youth. And we thank you for prioritizing youth safety.
Hello, everyone. What's up, GENup? I am so excited to be here with y'all. This is my second year as a state senator, and y'all have been my partners from the get-go. Not just this year on SB 954, but also last year when you partnered with me on 2 bills. 541, which is a first-year version of what we're doing today with public safety, public health safety, but also on SB 260 when we're looking to address period inequity. So let's talk about what's happening with your generation. You know, unfortunately, your generation is dealing with a lot of STIs. You know, I know that's not a sexy topic to talk about, but 15 through 24-year-olds account to close to 50% of our STI cases here in California. And HPV cancer has actually increased as well. So we want to make sure that we're protecting someone's right whenever they make that personal decision to participate in sexual intercourse, to be safe. And how can we ensure that that's happening? Well, we need to provide access to condoms. I know this has been a crazy fight, right, with the opposition and what they're thinking that we're trying to do. But we know that we're looking at science, we're looking at data, we're looking at the CDC and what they're saying about this information, and we want to make sure people are safe. But I know you know a lot about the bill. I also want to focus my remarks on just how amazing your group is. I love seeing youth getting involved, young individuals getting involved, because often people say that you are the future and so forth. You are the present right now. In the past generation, Gen Z, younger millennials have really shifted everything that we do. And I'm so proud to have y'all as a partner here and seeing you shift and what policy we work on. because you're living the day in and day out as a young individual. You have had to experience so many different things that even I didn't experience, and I'm still a millennial. I am the youngest state senator in California, so I love working with y'all. Maybe it's because we're the ones that are closer in age, and I don't have to think too far back to being in that age group. But it also reminds me of how passionate I was when I was younger, and seeing what I needed to do to create change in the society. We want to make sure that we're stepping away from unpaid internships, that we look at student debt and really erase it, that we make sure that work-life balance exists, that we remove barriers to XYZ, that we're closing public health inequities, that we're looking at public safety and reimagining that. So I am so excited because I know this isn't the only bill we're going to work on together. We're going to come back and always make sure to see what else we need to do together. So GENup, you should all be so proud of all the work that you're doing. I'm honored to have been the author to work with you on this issue, and I look forward to continue working on so many more issues.
Thank you, Senator Menjivar, so much for joining us. And again, it was wonderful working with you last year, and we're looking forward to our continued partnership this year. So appreciate everything you do, and thank you for inspiring us youth. All right, next up, we're gonna pass it off to the wonderful primary representative for all of California's 5.9 million public school students on the California State Board of Education. She is a full voting member of the California State Board of Education, so passing it off to the wonderful Anya. Anya, go ahead and take it away.
Hi, everyone. My name is Anya Iapun, and thank you so much for the opportunity to speak with all of you. I'm super excited to be here. And I first wanted to say, I mean, the work that you all do is so incredibly inspiring. The time and energy you all dedicate to championing different youth efforts. It's inspiring, it's to say the least. And, you know, I'm currently serving my term as a student board member to California State Board of Education. But my journey as a student leader has been pretty long. I've worked with my city, my county, my school district. And there have been several times where I've entered rooms and spaces that are adult dominated, who are filled with experts who have been doing this work for longer than I've been alive. And, you know, and some of those instances I've kind of been confronted with the question, as a student, what do I have to offer? And I, you know, for my brief remarks, I just kind of wanted to talk about some of the reasons I've seen how students can be so inspiring and so important in this sphere. And the first is just the optimism and the energy. You know, it takes years sometimes to make change, and that can be frustrating, but it's students coming together, like in your organization, that really drives change forward, and allows us to improve constantly, to bridge inequities and uncover disparities and problems that we didn't even know existed and address them. And I think that's so incredibly important. And I also think that sometimes our lack of expertise can actually be an opportunity to be really creative, to look at things from a new angle and a fresh perspective without the limitations of like, this is how it's always been, this is what the status quo is, like, how are we going to change this? It allows us to kind of come up with those big ideas. So my biggest piece of advice to all fellow youth change makers is just don't be afraid to share your ideas, even if you think they seem outlandish, unfeasible, impractical, because that's how some of the best ideas start out. So I just wanted to end with, your voice matters, and your work that you're already doing is inspiring. Don't ever be afraid to speak up and ask questions. And thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for being here today. And we're so honored to have you, and we love all the work that you're doing. I would now like to introduce Assemblymember Friedman, who we have the honor of working with on multiple bills, including 2801 and AB 810. So Assemblymember Friedman, whenever you're ready.
Hi, everyone. I'm so excited to be here and really so inspired to see all of you here and all of your activism. You should be so proud to be working on this incredible slate of bills that will help young people all across the state of California. So thank you for what you're doing. It's very, very inspirational. I am really also just excited for the partnership that we've had over the years. Really love your focus on making sure that we have support for students, support for young people starting out. Everything that you're doing is really on point for what people are struggling with right now. So as you probably know, I have 2 GENup sponsored bills this year, and really thankful to all of you for bringing me legislation and for partnering with me. AB 810 is about the practice that we have heard of in the press more and more of what they call passing the harasser, which is when somebody is forced to leave a university or a school because of real and sustained accusations of sexual or workplace harassment. And we've seen this with athletics, college athletics. We've seen this with professors. And what happens is people are allowed to quietly leave their college, even though it was found that they did do something that was, outside the bounds of what is considered to be ethical and moral. And then they go to another school, and there's never a background check that's done that will uncover these actions, and these people end up getting placed in another school and all too often committing the same abuse. AB 810 will stop that by saying that if there are sustained serious allegations of harassment, then that has to be reported when a new school does their background check, and that those schools are under a positive obligation to do that background check and to find out about these allegations. We don't say that that person can't be hired. They can plead their case to that next school as to why they've reformed or why there was a misunderstanding. But we believe that the schools should absolutely know if someone has committed sexual harassment, if somebody was credibly accused of assault, whether they're a professor or they're a coach. That's something that schools should be able to uncover and use in their hiring decisions. And by the way, that bill passed out of committee with bipartisan unanimous support. So we're really hopeful for it moving forward. And thanks again for your help on that bill. AB 2801 is another bill that you brought me, which we are so proud to be working on with you. And that ensures that the security deposit of tenants are not kept unfairly just because of normal wear and tear on an apartment. This is when your landlord says to you, I'm sorry, I'm not giving you your security deposit back, or I'm not giving your whole security deposit back because of something that that maybe you didn't do, or something that was just routine wear and tear. It's not fair, and it often keeps tenants from being able to have a security deposit to use for the next apartment. So what we're doing is tightening up the laws around this and saying that the landlord has a positive responsibility to have photographic evidence of the condition of the apartment before you moved in and what you did. And it also will give you the chance to repair something yourself if it was just, something that you can do the repair on, something very minor. But unfortunately, we see this a lot. We see security deposits kept from people who don't necessarily know the law and who aren't in a position of being able to go to small claims court. And it really shouldn't be on that tenant to prove something when the landlord can't offer any evidence that this is a repair that you caused. So from Title IX violations to predatory leasing practices by landlords, the state of California, we know, has to do a lot more to protect our college students. And that's what these 2 bills are intending to do. We need your voices to be loud and proud about all of these issues. We need you to continue to share your own experiences and your stories so that we can explain to people why this legislation and all of the bills in the package are so necessary. You are all our future, and we should be supporting you. I wanted to also let you know that I'm going to be coming on as a co-author to one of your other sponsored bills, AB 3116, and I'm really excited to engage with all of your sponsored legislation. Let's go and get this done. And thanks again for inviting me here this evening. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much, Assemblymember Friedman, for your diligent work on such important legislation. Next, we would love to welcome Assemblymember Ward's office, who, although could not be here himself, is authoring 2 of our bills on our slate, one in our mental health issue area and another one in our health issue area, AB 1955 and AB 1858. We are co-sponsoring AB 1955 that will improve school-based health and mental health services, and we are supporting AB 1858 that will standardize the process for creating framework standards on how TK to 12 schools should conduct shooter drills. So let's welcome Natalia Garcia, who's speaking on behalf of Assemblymember Ward.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for having us, and apologies on Assemblymember Ward's behalf. He really wanted to be here today, but is currently sitting in the Capitol right now in Assembly Local Government Committee, but wanted to send me on his behalf. And so just want to say, start off by saying it's so amazing seeing so many youth participating in our legislative process. It's super pivotal to have y'all's voices at the table and advocating on some of the most pressing issues facing Californians. So just wanted to start off, my name is Natalia Garcia, she, her pronouns. I'm Assemblymember Ward staffer, and would just like to thank you all on his behalf for inviting him to speak today, as well as for your continued advocacy and partnership on some of these very critical pieces of legislation. I'm proud to be here today to speak especially on AB 1955, which aims to increase funds to invest in school-based health and mental health for our youth. While there have been efforts across California to enhance school-based health and mental health services, students have reported increased mental illnesses and physical concerns, especially impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. By increasing these investments, preventative health services are enhanced, mental illness amongst youth is reduced, better outcomes for chronic conditions occur, and overall, we know that school performance is improved. It's imperative that the state enhances its oversight in supporting our youth's health and mental health. That's why Assemblymember Ward introduced AB 1955 and is super excited to have GENup on as a co-sponsor on this bill. Additionally, would like to thank you all for your co-sponsorship and support of the AB 1858 as it relates to providing standards for how schools conduct school shooter drills. Really, the intent behind that bill is to ensure that there's frameworks in place to minimize trauma that students undergo. And I'm very happy to report that AB 1858 passed the Assembly Education Committee today with bipartisan support. And so it's one step closer to getting through the process. And so just again, thank you all so much for your support and partnership. And thank you for inviting Assemblymember Ward and to be here, as well as allowing me to speak on his behalf. Please don't hesitate to reach out to Team Ward if we can ever be of resource. And again, thank you all so much, and really excited to see the continued advocacy you all do.
Thank you so much, Natalia. We are really happy to be working with Assemblymember Ward on these bills, really supporting student safety and health. I'd like to now introduce Senator Cortese, who has been working with us on two crucial bills, SB 333, which we are co-sponsoring and have been for the past 2 years, which creates a guaranteed income program for unhoused youth, which is essential in creating a stronger pathway to college for homeless students. And also we are supporting SB 483, which prohibits in all California schools the use of prone restraint, or in which students are restrained in a face-down position, which is applied disproportionately to students with special needs or kids of color.
Well, thank you very much. I hope you can hear me okay. I'm here in the Capitol swing space, as we call it. As you can tell, I'm just sitting outside. Several of us are in a really critical meeting about San Francisco Bay Area transportation issues. And the members of that committee, the senators, asked me to express their love for all of you guys. Senator Weiner from San Francisco, Senator Glazer from the Contra Costa area. And I know Senator Wahab is, I think, going to be up next here talking to you regarding this Zoom, regarding bills. But I need to jump back in there in just a moment. We very, very much appreciate all of us, not just me, but all of us here in the caucus, your support of these critical bills. SB 333 is moved through the legislature with flying colors, with several unanimous votes at the committee level. The big issue now, of course, with the budget deficit is whether we can get, the very modest but necessary funds to fund a guaranteed income program for 15,000 high school students that will graduate into homelessness this year, next year, and probably the following year if we don't do something about that. The guaranteed income program creates a 5-month bridge for them at $1,000 a month between graduation in May and the resumption of school in the fall, or for some of them, a job or a vocational interest. 403 is the Brown Restraint Bill. You heard about that. It's amazing that that law even exists in my mind, that people still do this. A 15-year-old student was killed. And in fact, that's going to a criminal trial in Davis, California, being held down in a prone restraint for so long that he just died. A person on my staff who's actually formerly an intern, a paid member of my staff, who's a disability activist in Santa Clara County, brought this to my attention in tears, sitting with him at a Starbucks when he told me that this had happened to him. He's now an adult. It had happened to him when he was a youth, and it so traumatized him that he's never been able to get over the trauma, being held face down on the ground with force. I hate to say it this way, but almost a George Floyd type of posture. And most of the students this happens to are disabled and certainly overrepresented in terms of people of color. So thank you for your support of these bills. I'll stop now and appreciate you inviting me to be with you today.
Thank you so much, Senator Cortese, for all your important work on such urgent and pressing legislation. Next off, I'm going to be passing off to Senator Wahab, who is authoring SB 1318 on suicide prevention policies that address the pupil mental health crisis.
Hi, guys. I just want to say thank you for having me. I really do appreciate it. My name is Aisha Wahab. I'm the senator from, let's say, from Hayward down into San Jose. So I touch the Bay Area. But I really just wanted to specifically talk about 1318. Senate Bill 1318 is about child suicide prevention. And it's a very simple bill in context. It just passed out of its first committee 5-0 in education. But the concept is that if a child does something that, basically in school or says like, I'm potentially like endangering myself or something like that, that triggers attention, that the schools engage with a mental health therapist, psychologist, anybody prior to engaging a police officer, number one. And number two, also asking the child specifically, if we were to alert your family, what would that look like for you? Does that look like just a stern lecture, disappointment, or abuse, right? And oftentimes we had a specific individual share their story that they did an anonymous complaint against their parents, and they were sent straight back to their parents, and it just consisted in more abuse. And that's something that we want to refrain from. This is a bipartisan effort in a lot of ways. We had significant support, and I do just want to highlight why it's so important when therapists are fully trained to engage with a student and understand and ask the questions that they would know if this requires more attention, if there is abuse at home. And some people who oppose the bill, they want parental consent and parental rights, which we fully support. But the one consideration is that the therapist that asks the question of the student, the reason why that student may be acting out or, having an episode is primarily because of the fact that there may be abuse in the home that was historically never shared with organizations and school and social services and much more. So this is the first step, just one, again, to protect the child. Of course, the parent will understand and be informed of what's going on. But first and foremost, it's just making sure that that child is okay before anything else. So that is what the bill is. And we're very, very happy that this bill has moved forward 5-0 from Senate Education. And we're going to continue moving this forward. So thank you, guys. I really do appreciate your time. And my office, we have Carson on the line. Happy to drop his email if you guys need any questions answered or anything like that. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Senator Wahab, for being here today and for partnering with us this legislative cycle. I would like to now introduce Assemblymember Connolly, who GENup is working with on some higher ed bills for Title IX. So, Assemblymember Connolly.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be back with you again this year. As was mentioned, I'm Assemblymember Damon Connolly. I represent the communities in Marin County and Sonoma counties, and here to talk about my bill, AB 1790. And really excited to be working with Generation Up on this bill and having you on board as a co-sponsor. This is actually now part of a larger package of 10 bills brought by 8 assembly members dealing with the issue of sexual harassment on our Cal State University and community college campuses. It stemmed from an audit report that the California State Auditor came out with last year, which showed or assessed California State University's handling of sexual harassment complaints against employees. We know this is a hot button topic over the last several years. It's gotten a lot of media attention and certainly has gotten the attention of the legislature. So that audit included the Office of the Chancellor, California State University, Fresno, San Jose State University, Sonoma State University, which is in my district, due to complaints that the Cal State University system lacks adequate and consistent corrective action vis-a-vis complaints about sexual harassment. So it highlighted several faults and failings with CSU's current policy and cases at many campuses of allegations not being adequately investigated or followed up on or addressed. So where investigations were conducted, it was found that many campuses utilized deficient processes, including the frequent dismissal of complaints on the basis that they do not meet the CSU's policy's definition of sexual harassment. So we in the legislature, it goes without saying, have a responsibility to ensure that our students and faculty and staff at these institutions are protected and to ensure that sexual harassment and assault allegations are not slipping through the cracks. So AB 1790 will require that the CSU implement the California State Auditor's recommendations by January 1, 2026. These recommendations include requiring the Chancellor's Office to play a more active role in providing oversight, developing standardized guidelines for all formal investigations, and establishing a system-wide requirements to address unprofessional conduct. So we believe these efforts will be critical to improving the livelihood, the well-being of students, including at Sonoma State University and around the state. And really looking forward to working with all of you, with my colleagues, to come together to ensure that all of our higher education campuses are safe for our students and faculty. So thank you again, and wish you all the best of luck in all these great initiatives that you're involved in, and we could not do it without you. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Assemblymember Connolly, for joining us today. Appreciate our partnership, and we're looking forward to working with you on this historic and transformative Title IX slate with you this year that our wonderful Higher Ed Policy Director, Kate, is leading the charge on. So thank you so much for joining us today. Next up, we're going to pass it off to Dr. Michael Kirst, who is a professor emeritus at Stanford in the School of Education and also the longest serving president of the California State Board of Education and also a member of the GENup Advisory Board. So Dr. Michael Kirst, passing it off to you.
Yes, thank you for having me. I'm really impressed with the range of issues that you're now addressing on GENup. It's grown from pretty straightforward schooling issues to the wide range of things that we're doing today. And I think it is exemplary in terms of what you've been able to accomplish to broaden out your interests. Another thing that has impressed me as a member of the board is how effectively, GENup has been able to replace students who have to move on to other things that they're doing. And you're able to plug people back in a way that and recruit new people in a way that is very, very effective. So I think that is an important issue that concerns the board, and you've been handling it very well. My concern is in working on with other board members, and I saw Delane Easton was on the call, good friend, is the financing of the GENup. It needs more money, I think, to build up its infrastructure, to allow students to take trips to the state capitol and around the state. And so I think that issue is moving forward. There has been success with some foundations with the state government, but I think the infrastructure of the organization, although it's been holding together quite well, needs more resources and money to do the job that you really are so able to do. So those are my comments, and I would close with, I've been involved in California education policy since 1969. And it used to be that all we heard from was members of student councils, elected members of the student body president. Those were often from high income districts, not representative of the state. And then we moved on to having students do rallies around various causes. And now we've made this great leap forward to what we heard today about the specificity of the bills and what you're supporting. So as one member of the board, I'm very impressed with the people that, and the students that are working on this. And I know I speak for the board and that we look forward in helping you in any way we can to do these important work.
Thank you, Dr. Kurz, for all your support as well. We look forward to a wonderful, productive year as well. Appreciate all of your support and guidance. Next up, passing it over to Mr. Lempert, who is another wonderful member of our GENup Advisory Board and the president of Children Now and a former leader in the California State Legislature himself, particularly on education policy. So, Mr. Lempert, passing it off to you.
Well, thanks, Alvin. I just want to echo Mike's comment, and it's an honor to be here with Mike and Delane, who are education institutions in California, and just the fact that you got all those legislators and are so involved. Just to echo what Mike said, this is really extraordinary what GENup has and is doing. And I was just telling a group of folks, there's a lot of groups that need to weigh in on education. Most importantly is youth voice, and so just thrilled with all that you're doing. I just want to make really three quick comments. Not that you need more bills to worry about, and you're already sponsoring a number, but since I've heard and appreciate your guys' leadership, I just want to mention one other bill because I don't think Senator Wiener was on this call. He's authoring Senate Bill 294 that's co-sponsored by Children Now. And real quick, if you break your arm, there's no question that the insurance company is going to cover it. But if you have a mental health claim, 80% of them are denied by insurance companies. So this would require an automatic appeal. It could be really transformative in terms of getting young people mental health services. The second comment is just we're continuing our efforts, and I think it's so important for youth voice. And of course, Dr. Kurz was the leader in LCFF. We're finally making some progress on getting some more transparency in LCFF and also trying to simplify these LCAPs. I just would urge all of you at the state level and in your districts that we really need to keep pushing for more transparency so we can see how the dollars are being spent, and to really push for these LCAPs to be more useful. The idea of student voice in LCFF is not to appoint a student to a committee, but really to have students weigh in on the priorities of the district and to make that an easier process. And finally, speaking of money, I will just say it's been mentioned by many folks already that we're in a budget deficit year. I remember during the Great Recession a number of years ago when the state had deep cuts. Guess what got cut the most proportionally? Education, higher ed, and early childhood. We made a lot of progress, thanks in part to you guys. They're those areas, higher ed, K-12, early childhood, are not at the top of the chopping block this year, but that's because of much more assertive advocacy, and they're not escaping cuts. And if we're not really assertive, they will get deeper cuts. So just don't, when legislators say it's a tough budget, there's nothing we can do. There's a lot they can do. So really keep pressing to make sure that the last place we cut is higher ed, education, early childhood. And if there's any available dollar, it should goes to those areas. So that's just a plea, given what effective advocates you guys are.
Thank you so much, Ted, for joining us today. Really appreciate all your support as well, and we look forward to a wonderful partnership with both you and Children Now for the 2024 leg cycle. So thank you so much for all your support. Next up, we're going to pass it over to T, who's going to share a bit more information about our K-12 slate. So T, take it away.
Yeah, I just want to highlight 3 big bills that we wrote this year. We are working on SB 1288 with Senator Becker, which would establish a work group within the California Department of Education to study artificial intelligence-enabled and tech-enabled teaching and learning. It would make policy recommendations to improve student outcomes and would help students and teachers deal with AI in classrooms. Second, I also want to highlight AB 1939, also a GENup written bill that we are working on and co-sponsoring with Assemblymember Meinstein, which would require county student attendance review boards to consult with student board members annually to give further youth choice and a voice in the fight against chronic absenteeism. And then also in the same vein of working to reduce chronic absenteeism in school districts, we're working on AB 2771, also with Assemblymember Meinstein, which would require the State Department of Education to post information on its website and encourage schools to reduce chronic absenteeism by creating school site absence intervention teams. These are all bills that focus on some issues that we really, really care about this year, helping out youth to be more engaged in their education and equipping students and teachers with the ability to deal with AI and evolving AI in the classroom, basically. And yeah, that is 3 of our K-12 written bills this year.
Thank you so much for highlighting those top lines, T, for K-12. Passing it off to Daria now for higher education.
Hi, y'all. At GENup, as y'all know, we believe that students have the right to safe academic and residential environments. We started harm reduction work last year with our bill AB 461, which passed, and are so proud that we've been able to extend this work with both of our higher ed and K-12 teams. Our bill AB 1841 advances student safety by requiring university-affiliated housing staff at publicly funded California higher education institutions to train all residential life staff on the administration of naloxone, or Narcan, prior to the beginning of their role in residential life, and ensure that each staff member has 2 doses on their person at all times. By increasing the availability of naloxone and requiring that residential staff be trained on its administration, this bill addresses the rising tragedy of student overdose and prevents future deaths. While long-term solutions for decreasing the prevalence of opioids on college campuses are pursued, this bill would ensure institutions of higher education are doing all that they can to protect students' health in the meantime. We are so grateful for Assemblymember Weber's office and can't wait to continue on with our work this policy season. Thank y'all.
All right, thank you so much, Daria. And that concludes our 2024 policy unveiling. So thank you so much for all of you guys for tuning on, for folks watching this, as well as for all the participation and attendance from not only many members of the legislatures and chairs of key committees, but also leaders of various community organizations and nonprofits, members of our advisory board, and of course, to the wonderful Secretary of State, Dr. Weber, for joining us here today as well. So thank you all so much for tuning in. That concludes the 2024 GENup policy unveiling. So we look forward to seeing you all soon, and we're excited to share the great news with you later this year on hopefully what is to be a wonderfully productive policy cycle. So thank you so much, and wishing everyone all the best. Thank you for joining in today.